Hey guys, Chris Dick here. We're going to move into data modeling and continuing on from our previous session where we talked about querying the data and inserting data. Data modeling is an important facet of our development process because eventually we're going to have to create some objects that relate to our data code. And by objects, what I mean is we're going to be creating some C-sharp classes, okay? These objects represent the data entities that we will be using. There is a coding standard that we typically will use in data modeling, and the one that I like using is MVC, which stands for Model View Controller. Now, we're going to be focusing a lot more on the model side of things, but I'm going to add in these folders just so that they're there. Okay, controllers right here, and we're going to add another one called views. All right. So from here, in the models folder, we're going to create some class files that represent our data, okay? In particular, because we're working with this view student addresses, I'm going to create a student model and an addresses model, okay? Or an address model. Remember, everything in a model is singular, not plural, all right? Data entities is plural, which means that we have more than one, all right? So one entity is just one thing, okay? So we type in address. Whoops, I gotta spell it right. All right. And then we are also going to have students. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to get a little advanced here. I'm going to go into creating a base model. Okay. And that base model is going to contain a few items that we'll get into in a moment. Okay, we're also going to make all of these public so that we can consume them easily. Okay, base model, make that public as well. All right, so here in our program CS, all right, what we have is we have this thing called a data reader, okay? And I'm going to be using, in the base model, I'm going to be using this data reader as a way to fill the data into our objects, okay? So first off, what we have to do is we have to we'll look at addresses, for example, okay? What we have, if you type prop and then tab, we're going to start off with our address ID. Okay, it is an integer. Okay, this is how we're translating. All right. Okay. We have student ID, which is also an integer. These are fairly simple translations so far. Okay. Now we have to look over here just so we have our column data, so we understand what we're actually looking at. This is in our SQL Server Object Explorer. Remember, always just keep looking up here for what this view is called. So in addresses, we have that, and then we have the student ID, and then now we have a name, which is an nvarchar, which is the same as a string, okay? And there's several nvarchars as we go down here, nothing too complicated, all right? So I'm going to just copy and paste a bunch of these things down here. I'm going to see if I can drag this over here too. Can we do that? Yes, we can. Great. All right. Save some typing, right? Get rid of that. Get rid of those funny square brackets. Whoops. Pushed the wrong button. Okay. City, province, state, get that one over there. And it's good to keep them in order of appearance, just so that as you're reading through, things will sort of be identifiable to you. Okay, delete that. All right, delete that. Postal code, let's just add a few more lines here, because we have postal code, and then we have create and edit date. Now, create and edit date are special cases, because they are properties. If you recall, we try to put create and edit date into all of our tables, which means that if we do that, we can sort of say, we can establish some common rules, and that is how we use our base model. Okay, so everything that we create, every table we create will have at minimum a create and edit date. Okay, just like that. All right, I'm going to save all those by doing Control-Shift-S. Go back over here. Okay, now in order to give the properties of the base model to addresses, we just hit colon and then we type base model. Okay, up here at the top declaration line of address. All right. Now, if I go back over and I try to use my addresses, for example, okay, right now it's not going to do anything, of course, but let's just throw in some extra lines here. All right, address, okay, ADDR equals new address. Okay, you see it's giving me these red underlines here. That's because I haven't linked the model's namespace yet. So if we do control period, it says using data connection models. Okay, remember our project name is data connection. Our models is a folder within there. So again, it's just about organization and where to find things. Okay, so we want to find that into models. Okay, now addresses itself doesn't really do a whole lot, so we're going to be I'm going to go into our base model here, and we're going to set up a public property, okay, of an SQL data reader. Okay, oops, let me spell these things correctly here first of all. All right, and you see it's still got that red underline. We're going to add in the data SQL client, and again that goes up here. Okay, and we're going to call that reader. We'll call it, actually we'll call it data reader. Okay, and you can do it uppercase, lowercase, it really doesn't matter in this case, but I'm going to keep that, and that's going to be something that we're going to be sort of carting around with us in our information here. Okay, now in our address object, we're going to create something called a constructor, and the constructor here is very simple. We'll have one that's an empty constructor so far. Okay, but then we're going to have one that we're going to pass in a data reader object. Okay, okay, and we'll just call that reader. Excellent. Okay, and of course that has to be passed over here. All right. So from here, and there's a few other ways to do this, but we're just sort of working on this on a very simple prospect. So I don't want to bounce over and start talking about object-oriented program too much. But we have from here, we have a few things that we can take over. So we're going to take over this information. I'm going to copy that. Okay, and paste it into here. All right. So this means that if we have a valid reader, we're going to just fill some data by instantiating the object Okay, and filling in the information. Okay, and that way we'll be able to use the data as a model rather than just using the reader all the time. Okay, let's throw in some semicolons here. Okay, all right, and here we have postal code. There we are. Postal code, province and state, country. Excellent. Okay, I think we've got everything. Let's just double check here. Now see how this got out of order here. I'm gonna put this back in order just as they see it, so that, as you can see, if I'm comparing here, trying to make sure that everything is in the right space, that I've organized it. It doesn't have to be, but it just makes it a lot easier to know that you've got everything that you need. And we need name as well. Okay. All right. Now, of course, if I've got all this information here, I'm assuming that the reader that I give the object is going to have all this information. It doesn't always have that information, so we may need to make some concessions for it later on, but right now we're going to assume that we have the proper information that's coming from the reader object, and it's going to fill in this data. Okay, so if we now look at the information that we are pulling here from what we're displaying, I'm going to add in something now that will we're going to override the toString method. Okay, and I think it's protected override, and nope, sorry, public override toString. There we go. Okay, so we're going to override toString. Okay, which means that we're going to return a string. I'm going to take all the information that we copied from the other, the program.cs, and we're going to put it into here. Okay, so from here, obviously we don't need first name. Okay, and we were going to take this information here. We're just going to say we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oops, it starts at 0, so of course we need 0. Okay, and we have name, we have street name, street number. Okay. Now organizing this is a little bit important here too. Let's just make sure that when it displays in this format, it's going to look, like a normal address would. We got city, we got province and state, country, and then actually postal code goes right here. Postal code. Okay, so we don't need all this information here. Now let's just count our numbers here, make sure we've got it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we've got one too many here, so right there. Okay, excellent. And instead of the base string, we're going to be returning this string, so that's the information it's going to be returning there. Okay, excellent. Okay, so going with that, we've got all the information we need right now to display information from our reader. Okay, I'm going to delete this because we don't need this anymore. Okay, and now we can reference our toString method. Okay, And from here, from this select command, oops, I'm going to do select from addresses, okay, and we're going to play it. We'll see what happens here. I put a debug point on there just so I could show you how the details are go in, and if they go in. If they don't go in, then we'll know for sure if there's a problem. Okay. So we have some information. Currently, I didn't put in address ID and I didn't put in student ID. I will do that in a moment. I have not got create date or edit date as well. It's not in there, and we'll do that too. But from DataReader, right now we're not using the DataReader. We will in a moment. And we've got our name, our postal code. All the rest of the information seems to have gone in pretty well. Okay. Now if I display that, okay, we'll just debug through it. You can see that it pushes out that data in the format that we have asked for it. Okay. There's a couple blanks there, and that's something we'll deal with at another point as well. Okay. Now dealing with some of the things that we're missing, we'll put those in right now. Okay. So we have our address ID. Okay. Now here's what's important here. I left this one out on purpose so that we can deal with the conversion. Okay. Now if you notice, it uses this toString method. Okay. Address ID is an integer. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to do a convert to int 32. And we do it like that. Okay. And we convert it to a string, and then we convert it back over to an int. Okay. Now we do the same thing for student ID. Okay. And I'll just copy and paste this. All right. Those are both integers. All right. And then for the base model, we also had this data reader. So I'm going to set that to the reader that's coming in. Okay. Now if we were doing it just a slightly different way, and again I don't want to get everybody too confused with how we're using this, but we will, it will do the trick. Okay, I'm going to change this all to data reader. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's save that, and now we should have a little more information here in our address object as we bring it up. So if I click over here, all right, so I have an address ID. My city is blank. My country is Canada. We need to have create and edit dates. All right, and everything else looks like it's filled in pretty well there. Okay. Now create and edit date. First of all, they come with the base model. All right. So the base model, what we have to do is create a method that's similar to the one we just talked about here, where base model has a constructor. Okay. And base model has an empty constructor for one, but it also has one that uses a data reader. So SQL data reader. All right. Okay. All right. So if I call base with the reader information that's coming in, base is, remember, it's the base model. Okay. I'm going to copy or cut this one out, paste it into here. All right. Now, what we're going to be using here is we're going to be using our data reader. Okay, and we're going to just fill in create date. All right, and then this is a bit of a conversion. Okay, so create date equals right. Now it comes in as a string, and if I recall, there yes, that's right. We have to do a parse. Okay, parse. Okay, it comes in as a string. And there's easier ways of doing this, but I'm just going to take this long route to do it for now. All right, edit date, copy that, and copy that. All right, so this will not catch any errors right now, so it's only going to be, you know, just parsing what's there, and if there's an error, well, our program's going to crash out, so we have to be aware of that. Okay, so far we have our base being filled, we have our top level being filled. Let's try this again and see what happens. Okay, hold it over there. All right, so we're looking pretty good. So far we've got everything we need in our database object, okay, or our model. And again, if I display that, go back up here, finish up, it's still displaying everything the way it's supposed to. Okay. All right. So that's the first part of discussing how models work with our data. We'll continue on in our next session. So remember to like and share and subscribe to my channel. We'll catch you in the next session. Thanks, guys.